Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Koala meeting June 18th, 2025, before the beautiful midsummer up here in Sweden. We don't have any newcomers to this meeting, so I'll just move ahead to the first bullet point and ask Steve if there are any news from CycloneDX.
Let's see. The CycloneDX specification, I'm currently working on the automatic generation of the EC markup. I've published some really early drafts of that. So that's gonna, that work is continuing. I'm learning a ton about EC markup in the process. It's gonna help me with authoring of all the other specifications coming out of that group. Um, the work on CycloneDX version 2 has started. There is a branch in the CycloneDX specification repo where there's a couple readmes in there, and there is a lot of schemas. There's probably going to end up being a lot more schemas when we're done. So you can take a look at that. All of that is essentially providing the foundation for insights once that is available. And lastly, I believe the ECMA General Assembly is convening next week, I believe it is, where I think it's next week, or is it this week?
Yeah.
I think it's next week. And they're convening, and I will be virtually attending that to represent TC54 and kind of the work that we're doing.
Great. And our sister groups, the package URLs and the CLEs and all this world?
They're all doing great. Package URL is it's going to be a stretch, but I believe Michael is confident that we can make the September 1 deadline for getting package URL into TC54 for the group to review in preparation to, obviously send it to the Exicom and, for the December GA. So fairly confident in that. The CLE group, I think, is a little bit more confident in their ability to get common life cycle enumeration actually past that point and submit it to TC54 by September 1st. CLE also met with the Open EOX folks, and I think I don't think there's a lot of opportunities to necessarily work together on a specification per se. We're trying to tackle very different things, even though they both support end of dates. It was interesting that OpenEOX is framing end of dates, however, as quite literally the end of something, when in reality it's not. It's just a placeholder in history. End of lives obviously come and go. Happens to open source, happens to commercial software all the time. They are not having that perspective, so I thought that was interesting. We did get consensus, however, that I think the one thing that we could potentially agree upon are the definitions of the things that we're actually supporting, because the definitions are different between the two specifications. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
as you say, end of life is in many cases not the real end. I mean, products revive and they reopen and things. I think with the way I see the relationship between manufacturer and open source project and CRA, I think manufacturers will actually provide resources for bringing stuff back from end of life, because they just can't take the cost of upgrading at that point, so they need something supported.
CLE believes
see a bit more of that.
Yeah. CLE believes that we can get this into. We're trying to make this compatible with the infrastructures that we already know that are in place at NPM. PyPy, and Maven Central. So we have inroads to NPM and PyPy. And then I let Brian Fox know last week that Jordan's going to be reaching out to discuss Maven Central support.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. During the summer, I will be undergoing some medical treatments. So I asked Paul to step up as a tech co-lead to help me with the workshops we need to do in order to reach beta 2, and he has accepted because he has so much free time being a family father and all that, you know. So I'm really, really grateful, Paul. We will work together to coordinate the workshops, but in some cases I won't be able to attend, and Paul will then take the lead. So we're gonna work together here to schedule things. We have had a couple of workshops. We had a publication workshop, second part, where Chris Langton went through the open API spec for the publication side. Paul and I had a discussion whether we can merge them again. I separated them a while ago in order to make process on the consumer API without being hindered by the publication API. But during the walkthrough, we realized that there are a lot of changes needed, and we also realized that the objects in the publication side may be different from the objects in the consumer side. If we're going to merge back again, we have to develop some concept of embedding the consumer object in an envelope and adding the metadata we need on the publication side. But we are making progress there as well. I'm very happy for that. We discussed a few models that I showed in the last meeting, workflows for publication. Those are available in our repository under presentations as a PDF, so please take a look if you're interested. Yesterday, we also had a workshop focusing a little bit. We had very general discussions, but we ended up with some issues that we had discovered in the hackathon with the object model. And I think we have two proposals. Paul have an old one. Based on the discussions we had yesterday, I came up with a small hack. It's a pull request. Please take a look at it. But basically, we had a list of components with component UIDs, and I wanted to try if we could just make that an object with the component ID and a UID pointing to optional, pointing directly to the release. That would solve the dependency track problem. But let's take a look and see if that works. It's a minor change, really. It doesn't change the whole object model. We still have product, component, release, but we can pinpoint a specific release from the product in this case. Paul brought up some other cases where we had a product with the same, I would say, EN barcode on the box, but if they were actually selling multiple very different products in different markets and different settings with the same barcode, we realized that that's likely because barcodes cost money, and this company wanted to save money. In that case, I mean, they can't obviously use the EN barcode as a unique identifier for a product. So I have another pull request where I add some notes on this saying, obviously, if you do that, you have to find another way of separating the TEI so we actually find the proper product. Paul has proposed SKU as an additional, and I think we will have a lot of additional TI types. We have to be very agile in adding stuff people already have, because the one thing I don't want to end up with is people creating new identifiers for existing products just to create a TI. So we have to be very open-minded here. What I don't know, I asked you in the issue, Paul, if there's a standard for SKUs, or if that's just a product identifier term.
Yeah, it's essentially anything. We might want to put some restrictions on it to make our life easier to start with. Like, it's got to be ASCII or something, simple. But we can have. I'll take that discussion to the ticket.
Yeah, but yeah, we open a ticket. So okay, so that's basically going to be add your own stuff in here as long as you follow up our syntax in general. So it could be a random string that's unique for that vendor within the vendor's namespace. And that's something we missed. So that's good. If it's common to call it SKU, I think that's a good name. Okay. So we're making progress there as well. In the earlier workshop, we discussed the roadmap. We are shooting still for beta 2 during July, fairly soon. We want a virtual hackathon in August, and Paul and I need to plan a date for that. After that, beta 3, and in parallel with that, start the formal ECMA process, have real meetings in the task group, and start with all the lovely EasyScript stuff. I think we need to spend some time possibly to find a way to publish OpenAPI as an ECMA standard, but I'm sure there are other ones that have done that.
Yeah, we can, with the publication of the standard, we can include additional artifacts. And the artifact that we can include is the API spec. I would also recommend that we actually start the authoring of the EC markup before Q3. We have to have this into TC54 for review by September 1st, September 15th at the very latest.
I think we're heading towards 2026. So April 1st.
That's right. Okay.
So
never mind.
We have time.
Yep.
We have the time.
Never mind. Okay.
And we need another hackathon summer here as well. If we need to, we're going to add a beta 4, but right now this is the plan. But we are not going to release unless we feel that we're ready and have stuff that works, right? So this is not carved in stone, but I would really like to hit the target and be ready with a first version as an ECMA standard in April. There's a hidden agenda here as well. I would really like to introduce this on an EU level for NIS2 and CRA work. So we can't be too late. We have a few workshops ahead of us that we defined. There may be a need for others, then we'll take that. What I really want to, and I feel that I hear from many of you that we need to discuss digital signatures. At the first meeting, at least, I want to invite a few other people from the SCIT working group and some other working groups to get an introduction to what they're doing and how that fits in. I'm also gonna reach out to SPDX and see how they think about digital signatures in general. No questions, comments? No? Okay, I'm moving on then. Beta 2 planning. We have the 2 pull requests, 3 pull requests with Paul's original one. We need to make a few decisions there. I don't think the update of the discovery with adding the note about the dual use of the one barcode is a big thing. But adding a reference to the release, that's a change we need to agree on. So please take a look at that. Is there anything else we need in beta 2? Pavel, you had some comments. A definition of product or
yeah, I mean, it's all part of the same conversation. It's not like, to me, it's not a separate discussion. So the original suggestion from Paul and Nicholas, as I understand it, I mean, among other things, it suggests to drop the concepts of product and component and only keep product release and component release. Essentially renaming. So the term product
but
would mean product release.
we agreed otherwise yesterday. Do you want to reopen that whole discussion that where we
yesterday. No, I think yesterday we finalized that we need some time to kind of process what we discussed on the meeting. Like, I don't recall that there were I mean, I don't mind, but I think we need an additional workshop to reach agreement here.
But take a look at the pull request, Pavel.
Yeah. No, I saw the pull request, but based on I think the big issue we still have, and what I mentioned in the comment, and you mentioned that we need to discuss it elsewhere, is like this product to product release link is like definition wise, and what we really mean by product is still missing, and that's important. So I think it's still very messy right now.
But product and component are concepts we had for ages, and we still have them. Or do you want to remove components or?
Not remove, but my understanding of original again, Paul, feel free to interrupt if that's not correct, was that component would mean essentially component release, and product would mean product release, and that would be all kind of single layer thing.
I think one of the challenges we as a collective, and it was evident in the hackathon, or I think it was evident on yesterday's call, and you know, this perhaps highlights it again, Pavel, right? Is we talk about a data model or a data structure, and then we sort of often talk about the API as being, we're using the API spec to define the data structure, and the API does not need to respect or reflect the underlying data structure. As in, you know, the API could be written in a much more consumer-friendly manner, but the data could be structured like this under the hood. You know, our object model can look like this. So I think my view is that we probably just need to level set a few things. I think, you know, it was clear on the call yesterday. Certain things have been discussed. Maybe they're not entirely clear. Those decision points. That might be my lack of reading and presence in some of those workshops, as I highlighted, right? But I feel like, you know, even the definition of the word product, right? We have, you know, product in some of the text in the repo, meaning, you know, a physical item or a shippable piece of software, as we discussed yesterday. But then we also use the word product in our object model, and the two things may not necessarily be a one-to-one complete. Direct no.
Yeah, but we can't force clarity in a muddy market. We just have to find something that fits most situations.
Absolutely.
I think by separating the thing that is handed over as a product from the thing that is developed and versioned, we solved a majority of these problems. In some cases, the thing handed over has a version, but that's part of the product name. And as Niklas said, you create a new product when you have a new version, in that case. In other cases, the product stands and you roll versions on the component level. And we accept both ways because we can't force people to work in one uniform way. It's like we can't force to have real versioning schemes. That's a fight that someone else have to take. So we just have version as a string.
No, but I fully agree with all that, and I think what we have on component release is fine. I think the remaining issue is defining product versus product release, and I agree with Paul,
but
in a sense that it doesn't have to. So even if we acknowledge it as an object model, it doesn't have to translate to Open API as is. I agree with that fully. But we need to have a clear definition.
You need to bring out an example then of what doesn't work with the current, because right now I hear a lot of words, but I haven't seen an example that's broken. But we can do that in the workshop. But I think we solved the issue we found with dependency track, the bundle there. We need to, I mean, we can discuss philosophy all we want, but we also need to get somewhere. But if there's something that doesn't really work, a product component set, let's bring that up and discuss it from a use case, a real case.
No, right now, the real use case is in the text that I commented. You use basically terminology product and product release, but we did not define what this means in terms of T, and that's very important. So right now, the phrase doesn't make
okay, I can fix it. The texts I haven't updated. You saw that I updated a lot of different things that was old. So we can update the text.
No, that's been you.
Because we are focused on other things.
No, but that's the text that was added today. I was just pointing out that this concept is still messy because we think in terms of product and product release, but the standard right now, as we develop it, it doesn't really have a concept of product release. I mean, the fact that you put it in.
But I mean, sometimes you have to write text that people understand and not go down into detail. I couldn't write product component release because no one would understand it. But I'll try again, Pavel. I'll look at that and try that text again.
Okay, I'll tell exactly what I mean. Just a moment here. Yeah. So you're saying TEI is unique for a product, not a version of a product. So this phrase does not make much sense to me.
Okay, but then I'll fix that phrase and make it more clear.
So I really don't understand what you mean there. And Paul commented that, so I don't know if others do understand this.
Yeah, I think it's not the example of the object model, Ollie, I was calling out. I think that there are just we probably got lots of parties contributing, and we just need to define some of these terms a bit more clearly, and that will give us a better foundation.
We said that before, that we need a better definition, and I added a little bit more in the top level README in the pull request. We have some in the API flow that we may need to copy out of that document and move out, where we define the various, product, component release, artifact, and so on.
And now
I think I added that to the core README now.
Yeah, and from purely API perspective, what I need to understand as a person who would potentially implement this is, let's say, a cell phone. Let's say we have a or we used like router. Let's say we have like Acme router. of specific model, and we call it a product. And then we find out that this router has like regional, different region codes and different hardware versions, and all of them
Well,
are
that's
essentially different.
yeah,
So
and as Paul pointed out, those are different SKUs and should be different products. And we'll
yes.
clarify that when we add SKUs.
So this is very important to clarify
Yeah.
for implementation. And then
I think my commit clarified a bit, but we're going to add more when we add SKUs.
But then you're saying that TI is unique for a product, not a version of a but my understanding that TI should be unique for this specific hardware version and
but
region.
then you're using version in a different way. I properly used version for a release, not different types of the same product, right? But we can clarify that, absolutely.
But this is what I understand by release. So that's very important to get this kind of universally understood. Because if there is a very specific product, like specific hardware version, etc., then there are no underlying versions. That's how I understand it. That's like the final thing.
Yeah, but there are versions of the components within that, like the bootloader, like the operating system, like other things. I mean, those are components that have releases, right?
Yes, but those are not versions of product.
Okay, we just need to define words here, but the US version of the box and the EU version of the box, with different people listening in to all your traffic, I would say those are two different products. But yes, absolutely, we should clarify that. Thank you.
To clarify,
now I understand.
So what you wanted to say, just for me, just so we make sure we have same understanding here of the actual thing, is basically you're saying that if I have this exact router, but my firmware is on version 1 and your firmware is on version 2, we have the same TI.
Yep.
Is that okay? So that this is what I understand. Yes, but I think it should be a real. So the terms should be defined, and so right now it's not clear from the way it's written.
No.
Okay.
Okay, then I understand. Thank you. I'll make some additional text and see if we can clear this up. Because the version and release have been also muddy, and we need to go through all documents and clear this out, because we originally used version for components and then we changed that to releases. And
I don't think we need to solve muddiness for the whole market, but we should have a definition within the standard definitions and then keep those.
We should use the same language for the same thing. Otherwise, we'll be as confusing as the marketing department. And I don't want to get close to that. Okay, great. Thank you. I added I'll write in English. Okay, cool. And I need you to review that, Paul. Test data set. We discussed earlier, and we have that in a workshop. So let's discuss that in the workshop coming. But Pavel contributed something, and we have, if I remember correctly, Paul, you opened a GitHub repo for that. A separate one?
I did, yeah. I think also we probably need to shift our focus to codifying some of those examples as well, because I think that will help with the other points that Pavel mentioned in terms of clarifying these terms. And
Yep. Great. And we said we wanted a nice and cozy data set, and we wanted one with all the edge cases, the torture, like products with 1,000 different components and components with thousands and thousands of releases. that kind of weird stuff. And now with these links, we also need to have bundles with specific bundled products with specific releases in there as well. Okay, cool. Coming events. We have the Nordic Software Security Summit that I'm operating in October in Stockholm. We have a really good program coming up, and I still have open spots if any one of you want to help me fill that up. We have everything from SBOM Love with Anthony Harrison to CRA process for embedded systems, and we have very interesting talks. Now, compared with last year, I'm getting talks based on experience, not just theories. So that's good. Linux Foundation Open Source Summit in Amsterdam. I will be there for a few days, I'm hoping. We may have some side event for the Global Vulnerability Intelligence Project as well. OWASP Global AppSec. I can't say much of that. Steve, do you have any news?
Other than to say that it's in December at the end, beginning of November. No, I think the call for papers is currently, I think it's still open. It's going to be closing really soon though, if it's still open.
Have you submitted, Pavel?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank you.
See. We'll see.
And of course, next year, AppSec Vienna gonna be a party for us working with the T API, afternoon tea, I would say. But hopefully we have the ECMA standard then, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. I don't have the SBOM Hackathon event information. I didn't hear anything about it on the CISA meeting this week, so we'll have to come back to that.
So, one question.
Yep.
Will AppSec in Vienna be before or after the meeting of ECMA GA?
It's going to be after ECMA GA is end of June, and this is September-ish, I think. September, October.
AppSec Vienna. I thought it was in June.
Yeah, it's going to be in June sometime. I sent you the dates.
So they colliding. Okay.
I think it's going to be, well, what were those dates, Mark? Because I think the Vienna, I think, is going to come before the
I
GA.
wrote there mid to late June. Yeah, okay, so it's just before.
Yeah.
So it's just before, but basically everyone's going to be on.
You just killed the party, Morgan. You just killed the party.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. In secret, we can open the champagne bottles. I got an invitation to OWASP in Poland, Krakow, to talk on a conference and on an OWASP member meeting about Koala and CycloneDX and other things. So that's great. I've never been to Poland. I hear there are good sausages and beer, so I'm looking forward to that. Any other events we should try to reach out to and cover?
There's the OWASP Benelux. There's an OWASP Days in Benelux. I don't know where it's actually, what city it's actually being held in. It's in Belgium.
Maxim just called me during the meeting. He's probably want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the AppSec Days typically target developers, not security folks. So it could be a good audience to reach out to. But
Benelux Days, I talked there last year about CRA and Koala. And it's a really, really good conference. Huge attendance. There were 250, 300 people, something, in Utrecht. So I would love to come back to that. But we'll see. It's a great community. We also have a discussion. The OWASP project, like us, have Star is organizing a project camp week where she locks us up and we have to work hard for a few days. We're discussing having that on the ferry between Stockholm and Finland in October, close to my conference. But if it's a good idea to lock us in and work hard for a few days to read something, we can probably be part of that. We can consider it. I mean, we haven't made any decisions, or Star haven't made any decision. But we're toying with the opportunity. I believe it was in the UK last year. But it's a kind of a setting for OWASP projects to meet and start working or make progress together in a very casual, open way, if I understand it right.
Yeah, it usually involves cabins and that sort of thing. And you're right. I mean, you just basically get a bunch of OWASP projects together, and it's a really great opportunity for projects to kind of collaborate on joint solutions,
Yep.
which could be ideal in the case of T.
Yep. But we're looking. There's some islands between Stockholm and Finland called Åland, where we try to find a kind of nice, cozy, low-key place. Star didn't want a fancy hotel with fancy bars. She wanted to lock people in and make them work hard. I believe she can do that. So we'll see if we can get something together. Okay then. Any other topics?
No, it's just, is it my imagination, or did something go a bit smaller on your font there in the last 2 or 3 lines?
Yeah, something happened. I won't take that as a bug report. I won't do anything. It's just Google blah 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 that something happened. I think this one was cut and pasted with smaller fonts.
Right.
From somewhere.
Yeah, it's just at my age, I kind of squint a bit trying to read the smaller fonts.
Okay. Yep. Okay then. If that's all, I thank you for your assistance. Steve, maybe you can stay for a little bit before we jump over to the next meeting.
I do have one question.
Okay.
When going back to where you were saying about barcodes not actually being unique, isn't that going to be? Sorry?
Isn't that, I didn't hear your question, sorry.
I said very early on, we were talking about the fact that sort of barcodes might be reused. But under the terms of a CRA, if you're going to get a CE mark, wouldn't you have to have a truly unique barcode? Otherwise, what's the point? What is the CE referring to if you can't guarantee uniqueness?
Yeah, I think that's muddy waters, but that's something that some manufacturers discover they can do and not pay the license fee for a new barcode. They have to have unique identities for the market authorities to actually be able to do their thing.
Yeah, but one thing you don't want to see happen is somebody getting issued with a CE mark, and then they use it incorrectly. But in other words, they apply it to something to which it doesn't really belong.
Let's see, if you go out in stores, you'll probably find products that have CE marks that are really shady today, because 90% of the market is self-certified, right? So I don't think it's gonna stop that from happen. In the categories where you have third-party certification, that will be very, I would say, controlled, and they won't be able to do this in that market. But for most of the products, I mean, if that happens, when problems occur, they will probably get some very noisy market authorities after them.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, if I got a CE mark on my mouse, I don't really care. If I got a CE mark on my home hub, you know, my router at home, I do care.
And especially on the power supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were specifically discussing routers actually yesterday, and with like real life examples. So, but like as a standard, I don't think we're solving that. We just need to say how to approach that if that happens.
No, we might not be solving it. That would be the realm surely for you know, people who are actually implementing the CRA. But I was merely observing that sort of couldn't it be a side product of the CRA as more attention given to the occurrences of where barcodes are actually not unique because it causes problems.
Yep. Yeah, there will be people who don't understand, so we have to refine our documentation. I think we need to start planning on that note, Koala. We need to also to start doing some market bullshit guesswork. I'm really sorry to push you into that area, but try to guess. I mean, we can't assume the consumer market will change overnight and start applying all this, but there are vertical markets where the customers or vendors or regulation will require usage of something like the TAPI, but we need to figure that out and see if we can get them engaged or industry organization engaged and invite people to Koala. But that could be military, could be medical, could be car manufacturing. I don't know. What do you think?
So if, let's say, I reach out or we reach out and there is interest from the industry to participate, that would be welcome, right? For Koala.
Yeah, what I mean, which vertical segments would be most likely to catch on and adopt something like the API we're developing first? The consumer market will take many, many years, but unless regulators push to it.
But I think consumer market should be interested in light of upcoming CRA regulations. That's my...
Yeah, but CRA doesn't force vendors to publish anything. So
the product liability directive changes will help.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to publish, but they have to store this data.
Yeah, they have to store all the documents internally, and they, as a manufacturer, I would sure as hell require this kind of automation from my upstream, even though I don't support it to my customers, right? But I want all the upstream manufacturers to provide me with updates and SBOMs and VEX files and other things, end of life markers, CLE.
But I think internally, like, yes, publishing and exchange part is not clear at the moment, but I think internally they already need it, because
Oh,
they
yeah.
should be able to provide those documents on demand. And this framework, I mean, assuming they don't have it yet, like, why don't go for a standard right away? Maybe this would be something internal though, and
Well,
at least initially. So those
So-
are just my thoughts on it.
So my understanding is the CRA requires manufacturers to publicly disclose information about fixed vulnerabilities. So T would be a way of them publishing it.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
guarantee consumption.
I mean, they could publish CSAF in this way. And I'm hoping that ENISA and market authorities will require this API to gather this data automatically, because otherwise there will be a lot of manual work for all the market authorities.
Now, one question, Steve, you and I, we were talking about reaching out to sort of commercial vendors of project lifecycle management software. As an example, Siemens Teamcenter, with a view to getting support added for CLE, which course is running ahead in the schedule of T. But if when would you view that as starting? Because the question behind the question is, if there is successful implementation, say for instance, of CLE in one product, two products, however many, surely that would be very useful for T, sort of a few months later, when you actually want to get support for T added to products. Because wouldn't you actually want support for T to be added to, say, Siemens Teamcenter?
I think T makes a lot of sense for vulnerability management and for procurement applications, because when you're procuring software, you want to obtain as much information about that software as possible. And then if you end up buying that software, it's no longer an eval. If you end up buying that software, being able to then correlate that to your CMDB and ultimately to your vulnerability management practices would be incredibly useful. And of course, doing that in an automated way would be ideal. So I don't necessarily know if the same folks that do PLM would also want to support T. We can certainly sell them on it, but I would rather approach them as two different things. Like the PLM folks, I would lean into CLE a lot more versus your procurement CMDB vulnerability management folks. I would lean in a lot more with T, because you're gonna get CLE if you adopt T.
Yeah.
Yes.
So CLECon will be another event with a different target group. But I think somewhere in the fall we should run an update KoalaCon and plan it ahead so we really can get information out. I haven't checked lately how many views we have of the old video, but there were a few, but we need to have more. And
to Paul's earlier point about making the API a little bit more user friendly and not necessarily a direct representation of the object model, it might be beneficial, especially if we're targeting manufacturers and PLM. It might be beneficial if T actually had a very easy way to get CLE information without necessarily having to follow the object model. Something to keep in mind, I think. The CLE folks are also working on pagination, so there's likely an opportunity to kind of work together on something like that. We are worst case scenario, we're assuming files, and we have a very, very simple way to do pagination that is likely going to be incompatible with what T is doing, would be my guess.
Ouch, that's not good.
So, yeah. Have you guys already figured out pagination in T?
I think
We
we're back
have
at the drawing board on that. Well,
Yeah,
it depends because
we have a sample, but I think we're still kind of talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's likely, you know, it might be beneficial to attend that group, or at least read the PR. I don't know if it's in the PR yet. Maybe attend the one or two of the other meetings, and we can kind of talk about pagination. Or I can invite Benji or Jordan to this call, and we can talk about it there as well.
That would be great.
I would be interested, yeah, to discuss. And I'm wondering, on their side, pagination, are they also doing API, or is it some?
No. It's
So
it's a
what's the
JSON.
meaning? Oh, it's in
Well,
JSON. Okay.
Yeah, so it could, you know, the CLE information could reside in the GitHub repo, for example. Could reside on, you know, a web server, or could in fact be an API. It doesn't really matter. But you
Okay.
know, if the CLE defines pagination and then T defines its own pagination on top of that, it's going to get really confusing.
Yep.
And
we
and
haven't.
I do think there is an opportunity to simplify the obtaining of lifecycle information without necessarily adhering, you know, going down the whole object model route. So don't think
we
of
have.
Yeah.
We haven't discussed. This is an artifact level in the TAPI, and I don't think we ever
and really release an artifact.
discussed
Yeah.
pagination there.
Yeah, I agree. And I would be very interested to know where CLE currently is, because a lot of our previous conversation on the subject was that we would like to have some input from CLE and then try to kind of implement it in T.
It's currently in we are specifying in the specification itself that the newest events have to be at the top in terms of whether it's a file or API, whatever. So newest events first. And then in terms of pagination, the only thing that we have is the presence of a previous. And if previous exists, it is a URL to where you can get the previous stuff.
Yeah. We never discussed that on that level we have open, but we also discussed earlier, we need some sort of status on a particular component release. And when I looked into CLE and chatted with, I don't remember, one of Benji and Jordan, they didn't have a security alert or security deprecation status. That was something they pushed to later. I don't know if that's still the case, but we may need to have our own enumeration for the status of a release.
Let me there was a question in the chat about the GitHub repo, and I put a link to the pull request because the GitHub repo is mostly empty, other than I think meeting minutes. I don't know if this PR has been updated recently or not. Doesn't look like it. Actually, it has. It's been updated just a couple days ago. So that's the latest PR that we have.
Do you know where's the meeting schedule for that group?
Yeah, it's on the CycloneDX website.
Oh yeah, okay, I'll find from there.
Working groups. Yeah, it should be.
Okay, thank you.
If you scroll down, there's the calendar and just look
Mhm.
for TG 3.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on Thursdays.
Okay. Okay, then. I think that kind of sums it up. We're on the hour, and many of us have other meetings. So thank you very much for participating in this meeting, and see you again in 2 weeks. We will come back to you with information about the workshops in the Slack channel. So please keep an eye open on the Slack channel as well. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.